Welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I'm talking about different role-playing games or tabletop role-playing games in specific. And this time we're looking at one of the first games that I've run with my little group of individuals that are helping me out with this channel. And that is Crash Pandas. Now, for those of you that don't know about Crash Pandas, it's a one-page role-playing game that was developed by Grant Howitt, and Grant does amazing one-page RPGs. They're very simple to run, very simple to learn, very simple character creation with just great fun results. So the whole thesis of Crash Pandas is that you are a bunch of raccoons, you need to go and steal a car, enter it into a street race, and then drive the car. And I love the simplicity of the character creation. So you essentially have 4 stats that you roll a d4 with, and each of those stats go into a different slot. So the first one you roll is for alacrity or alacrity, then chutzpah, ferociousness, and rotundity. And those are your 4 stats. And everything that you do can be distilled into one of those 4 stats. Now from there, within your character creation, what I usually do is I roll the 4 stats or I have my players roll the 4 stats, see what kind of comes to them from those numbers, or come to the table with an idea of their character. And the one-page RPG actually comes with some kind of questions, some leading ideas like who's your rival, why are you entering this street race, why do you need the prize, and within that you kind of set down your character. And anytime you can use that backstory within whatever you're doing, you get to add a d6 to your roll. So the overall mechanics of this is you have these 4 stats. You roll a d6 equal to that score. So if you rolled a 2 in chutzpah, if they ask you to roll chutzpah, you're rolling 2d6. If you roll a 6 or above, then you count that as a success. And that's essentially the whole, in terms of doing things within this game. Now you also start off with 2 items and you roll a d20, and these go from anywhere between a flame decal that's really cool, you have a fake beard and glasses, and there's a lot of really tasty things that you can pull about and use. And so what I usually do is if you're using the items that you have on your character, you also get an extra d6 in that roll. So you have a pool that you get to roll for. So usually when I set up this game, because I've played this game now twice, is the first part is stealing the car. So I had 6 cars that they could choose from. I had the actual monster truck of Bigfoot, Morgana, the band van, the souped up Nissan sedan, a family station wagon, a Lamborghini or the Lambo, and the Love Bug, a 1960s Volkswagen Beetle. And what I did was I had different modifications on the car when it came to the actual race. If they were to choose the Lambo, they had an additional 3 speed. They also had a steering of -2, so they needed more people to turn the wheel. With the Love Bug, they automatically had 1 success after the end of each round that they could spend towards whatever they wanted to do. And I'll get a little bit more into that when we get into the actual mechanics of racing. For the new souped up Nissan sedan, I had a -1 to speed, but a +2 to steering. For the band van, I had +1 to receive damage. So anytime the car were to, or the van were to receive damage, it takes an additional damage, but it also dealt an additional damage to anybody that kind of banged into it. And that went extremely more so for the monster truck. So the monster truck took -2 to speed, took a -1 to steering, but it damaged any other car by +4, and it reduced the amount of damage that it would take by 3. There was a little bit of balancing in that sense to make the cars have their own personality. One other thing that I did to kind of put a characteristic onto these cars is I chose a soundtrack for each of these cars. And what I asked my players to do, because we were all playing over Zoom, so it was all virtually, is to either put it up on YouTube or put it up on Spotify, any music streaming service, a particular album or soundtrack. So for the monster truck, it was AC/DC's Dirty Deeds. For Morgana, the band's van was Starlight Express from Andrew Lloyd Webber. Kanye West's Graduation was on the souped up Nissan sedan. The family station wagon had Limb Biscuits, chocolate starfish, and the hot dog flavored water. The Lambo had Black Pink, the album, and the Love Bug had Donna Summer's The Best Of. So I had them listen to those while going through the race. So for the mechanics of actual racing, this is where I loved, and when I really dug into the mechanics of this, they had to choose before knowing what anybody else was doing, and they couldn't converse or strategize together as a team. They had to make up their own minds independent of everybody else what they wanted to do. Did they want to push down the accelerator for a +1 in speed? Did they want to brake for a -1 in speed? Did they want to turn the wheel to the left? Did they want to turn the wheel to the right? Did they want to use any of their items or interact with the environment, or did they want to do something completely different, something like really, really strange and fun? With those all entail, this is where the chaos comes, especially when it comes to swerving out of the way of different obstacles. So what I did was, because most of my players came from Toronto and the greater Toronto area, I was racing around the kind of grid that we have for our highways. So I started on the 401, which is already bananas. And I had this set at like 3 o'clock in the morning, so the traffic would be relatively low, not completely vacant. So there were still cars that they had to weave in and around. Went from the 401 down the DVP, the Don Valley Parkway, across the Gardiner, and then up the 427. And the first person to get back onto the 401 was deemed the winner. The first game that I played, I knew I needed to incorporate more of the backstories. So for my second game, I had some of those individuals that the players created for their backstories actually part of the race to get them more involved in the race itself. And I also put in more obstacles to move around. So I put construction on the Don Valley Parkway as well as the Gardiner Express. I had them choose alternative routes once they got down to the Gardiner, so they could take either Jarvis, Yonge Street, or Lakeshore. If I were to kind of take what I learned, I realized that I needed to pay closer attention to the amount of damage that the cars were both doing, dealing, and taking, and make that more real world consequences. And because this was so quickly, I really should have done 2 races. One as a qualifying round that would then get them to the final race, and then a final race where they're taking on some souped up, even more difficult cars to put on. Because all said and done, with the character creation, a little bit of introduction to the game, learning the rules, playing the game, and doing the whole race, we only played for about 2 hours. Overall, all my players had a blast with this game. They loved the fast pace, really quick pick up and go aspect of this game. There wasn't a learning curve because I had both veteran players as well as first time role-playing game players that had never played any kind of role-playing game before, and they all were able to pick this up in a couple of minutes. There was no real questions about what do I do here, what do I do now. Everybody learned from one another. It was a very rewarding game that I would pick up and play very easily and very fun, because all you need is a bunch of D6s like Monopoly dice and a couple D4s. And that's all you need. What I also did was, because we were doing this on Zoom, I found all those like old racetrack mats that you used to have as a kid. I found one of those and I put a grid over top of that, like a transparent grid, and then just had the cars move across the grid in that sense. So that's just another really fun way of engaging the players in that way. So I highly, highly recommend and support Grant Howitt's work that he does. You should check out his Patreon because he does amazing games like this. Very fast, very easy to pick up, and we had a blast. So that's what I had for Crash Pandas. Those are some of the tips and tricks that I would do. Create your own little playlists to play depending on what cars they choose to really help put yourselves into the game as well. So what did you guys think? Have you played Crash Pandas? If you have, let me know of your own experiences of this game. Little tips and tricks that you would do for this game to help elevate the game even higher. Let me know all about that by commenting down below. And that's all I've got for this little edition. Stay tuned in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be talking about the Courts of the Fey Realm, which is a Cobalt Press Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm hoping to put that up next week, as well as the next game that my group is going to be playing, which is Paranoia, a really, really fun game. And I'm going to be talking about that probably in the next couple of videos. So yeah, and that's about it from me. Thank you all for watching and supporting me as my little experiment endeavor is going pretty strong. So thank you all for sticking around. And, you know, just keep on playing with your hearts. And I'm still trying to figure out a way to finalize all this. So I guess until next time, I'll catch you all into the next video.